First, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Robin Ice. I'm professor of practice and director of SoPA's General Legal Studies program, and I will be moderating. Before I introduce our panel, a little bit about me. Before coming to Tulane 6 years ago, I practiced law for 23 years, first in Atlanta, then in Manhattan. I started out as an associate, then was a partner, and finally moved to in-house. So I have some firsthand knowledge about legal careers. I also know what it's like to return to school and change careers, as many of you have done or are considering doing. In undergrad and graduate school, I was a theater major, and then I worked for 11 years as a puppeteer. When I entered law school, my sons were 2.5 and 7, and we made it work. And so that's why when I tell you, you can make it work, I know what I'm talking about. Now let's meet our panel. Each of our panelists, as I said, is a graduate of the General Legal Studies or Paralegal program and has forged a distinct career in the legal profession. And I'm going to ask each person to introduce yourselves. And first of all, tell us, when did you graduate from the program and what degree did you earn? What is your current position, or what are you doing now? And how did you find that position? So let's start in alphabetical order with Clare Donovan.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name's Claire. I graduated from the paralegal program in 2014 to get my certificate. I originally worked for a software company doing intellectual property, so copyright, trademarks, patents. And then I actually just in January moved to work with a nonprofit called the Next Gen IP Foundation.
Cool. And how did you find that position?
I found that position. I was actually originally working as a paralegal for an insurance defense firm, and someone had heard about me and they called. So that's how I did that.
Cool.
Word of mouth.
Okay. All right. And Kim Hawkins.
Hi, my name is Kim Hawkins. I'm a paralegal. I finished the program back in '92 where I obtained my associate's degree. I started the program coming out of Chicago, trying to figure out where I wanted to go, but I got caught up in a TV show that's called LA Law. And eventually I was like, I heard one of the actors say, you know, get the paralegals to do it. And in my mind, I'm like, what's a paralegal? So I did my research and I looked at UNO, and UNO had a program, but I really didn't feel comfortable. But I worked for a law firm, Chaff McCall, during that time, and one of the attorneys said, well, Kim, Tulane does have a program, so why don't you go at night? Because when I moved from Chicago to New Orleans, I had bought me a condo, and of course I was married to a mortgage at that particular time. So over the last 6 years, I went to school, I worked full-time, and I went to school at night. I got my associates in '92, and I continued with my career in '96, where I was able to obtain my bachelor's degree. After I finished, I worked for the law offices of Cardell Thomas. That was a plaintiff firm, motor vehicle accident and tort claims. And then I moved on to representing claimants in disability insurance cases with Bart and Neff. And truly, that was my first love, that I was able to really know how to, quote unquote, practice law, because theoretically, paralegals can practice administrative law in New Orleans instead of, you know, going to a courthouse and practicing law before a judge. So I became very, very fascinated with disability law. And after that, I did a number of other little paralegal contract work, from insurance defense to medical malpractice. But then I did some contract work for an attorney, Sharonda Williams. She was our city attorney. And I did some work for her on the side a number of years ago. And when she became city attorney, she directly called me and said, Kim, I want you to be my paralegal here in the office. I said, great, that's wonderful. And then I came on board and I was a paralegal here for about a good 2 months. But then one of the records managers who handles all the lawsuits resigned. And with my organizational skills, Sharonda said, Kim, would you be interested in becoming a records manager? And I said, yeah, great. And at that particular moment, I was kind of trying to figure out where my career was going. Was I going directly into records management, or do I want to stay being a paralegal? Well, of course, I became a records manager, but I still have my paralegal experience. Today, I work for the city and I manage over about 2,500 cases. What I do is I do pretty much everything. Initially, when the cases come into the office, I accept the services, assign the cases, put everything on the calendars, manage 26 attorneys, and and just pretty much do everything from the administrative aspect of it, keeping track of the deadlines from CDC to the Fourth Circuit to the Supreme Court and other courthouses in the state of Louisiana. So I'm relatively busy, but I love what I do.
Well,
And
there's joy in that.
And they can't tell me, oh, Kim, you did this wrong. I say, no, I did not do this wrong. I gotta, working for attorneys, you gotta keep a positive mental attitude. And you have to be certain that you know what you're doing.
That's
I
for
tell
sure.
paralegals that you have to be confident on what you're doing. And I also advise other paralegals, know your work, know your attorney, get into your practice, whether it's going to be insurance defense, plaintiff, read everything. So when your attorney asks you to do anything, you're able to execute the assignment. So that's where I am today.
Thank you. Wow.
Yeah.
All right. And I knew you would have an interesting story because having graduated in 1992, you have some time to build and it's all an interesting progression, I think.
Yeah.
Now let's talk to Jenna Nunemaker, a post-baccalaureate graduate.
Yes, so I graduated in 2018. I finished the certification program within a year. And I had previously gotten a bachelor's and associate's degree in fashion design. And I lived and worked in New York for 6 years. And then I moved back home here and wanted a career change and something more stable than that. And I had always kind of thought about law. It was always kind of in the back of my head. And I had heard about the 2-lane program just through like word of mouth anyway. And then I did some research and actually spoke to Robin prior to enrolling to get a little bit more information about the whole program, and enrolled, loved it, like had a great time. And going back as an adult, you were able to like learn how you learn, if that makes sense, and able to succeed a little bit better, I think, later in life, because you know what you want to do and you're focused and everything. So that through 2-lane, that led me to my internship at Herman & Katz, and then led me to my most former position at Morris Bart, which was the program coordinator of focus groups and mock trials. So that was a position actually like newly created based on need within the firm. It's not, a very common thing to hear about, and it was a very specialized role for paralegals. But that is one thing that's really cool. It's not always the traditional role of paralegal as you would think in your head. There are specialized roles that you can do within any law office, really. And those opportunities will present itself. And did I cover all the questions? Yeah? Okay.
I gotta unmute myself. You did. I did want to mention though, I think that your experience, and especially your having come into the position that you held just immediately before COVID, is a great example of how a legal position can evolve based on your interest and based on your talents, as Kim has pointed out. And also, I think that your most recent experience of being furloughed because of the pandemic is something that to which many of us can relate. And it also points out, however, that just as, and makes me observe that just as the whole world and the legal profession as a whole reacts to outward circumstances. In this case, it's a pandemic. In 2008, it was a real estate market crash and an economic fiasco that resulted. What I have observed in the time that I have been in the legal profession is that if you have legal knowledge, if you know the legal system and you have the background as a paralegal or lawyer, you're going to be able to bounce back. You're going to land on your feet because you're going to be able to move into another career that calls upon your skills and your knowledge. And I think that especially this group here, each of you has evolved from one plan perhaps into the next and the next as the circumstances have allowed, which is pretty fascinating. And I think it shows the flexibility of the market and the ability that you have once you have the knowledge inside you to go where you want to go. I'm sorry that Jonathan Foster hasn't been able to join us. Jonathan graduated with his bachelor's degree from the General Legal Studies program in 2018 and graduated from Tulane Law School in 2020. So he's just finished his law degree. Throughout this time, he's been working as a paralegal in a litigation firm, and I'm hoping that if he's able to jump in, he'll tell you more about himself. But for the time being, I'll just mention that he was to have been here. But as we all know from having worked as in law offices and in the profession, things come up, and when they do, sometimes you got to jump. So I'm pretty sure that's what he's doing. Well, let's move on then to some additional discussions and talk about what a typical workday looks like for our panelists. Because I'm really curious, especially Clare, let's start with you. What does a day look like for you? What are your, and outside the COVID atmosphere that we're in now, before this and presumably after, what would a day look like and what kinds of matters would you be handling?
Okay, I'm unmuted. Okay, I was just making sure. A normal day for me is I actually work with inventors, and I would basically do their, I would say, disclosures. So someone would come with an idea, I would take notes, and then I'd work with a patent attorney or agent and work with them to prepare their patent applications. And so that is something I do. And then the other thing as well, which is really speaks to everyone, is if someone needs something, I do it. I'm, with the paralegal world, you learn it's very important to be organized, be able to pivot or shift at any moment in time. And so that is something that's basically a big part of my job, is doing that. And then also, obviously, as technology and the world progresses, I have to keep up with, what's going on in the world, what are new ideas, what are new inventions, and trying to think for today, but then 5, 10, 15 years down the line.
Wow, okay. All right, so that's a good day's work.
Yes.
And do you work with a single attorney or do you work with several? How is it structured in your office environment?
Well, originally, I worked with 2 attorneys, and but it was, so for example, which is really different from when I did insurance defense, which is a very, very high caseload, a lot of, moving and all that. Really, honestly, with inventions or just patenting in general, it's much, I wouldn't say it's slower pace. It's just you have to get into very high specific details of how something is created. And so that is definitely a big difference going between that to this. And then also too, as I said, I worked with them as well in software. So that is, different as well. That's obviously more people, but it's less work, I would say.
Makes sense. All right. Very interesting. All right, Kim, let's hear about your typical day, if there is such a thing in the courts.
Well, now that we're in COVID, what I do generally is that I receive all the lawsuits the city has. We receive on average of about 10 lawsuits per day. We're talking about mandamuses, injunctions, pedestrian fall cases, motor vehicle accident cases. Sometimes we get workers' compensation cases. We also get false arrest cases dealing with NOPD and also civil service cases. So my typical day is that I'm going to be receiving these services that's going to be coming in. But for the most part, I'm in communication with the courts from the Eastern District of Louisiana to the point where they're sending me emails about things that were filed in their office. And here's the deadline to file your answer. I deal with the sheriff's office in CDC, and I also communicate with the civil service commissioners across the street as it relates to making sure that our attorneys are able to attend hearings. What I do is manage like 26 attorneys, ranging from mandamuses to motor vehicle accident cases. And typically, most of our attorneys handle between 10 and 15 cases each, if not more, because things are growing. So my typical day is to always stay organized. I'm actually in the library, and we have a lot of things going on in the library. And I'm gonna give you guys a little view of the library for a second. All of our files, since I'm records manager, what I do is that I house all of our cases that was closed. See this box, ladies, right here? Can y'all see those boxes? And this is all of our books. This is everything that I do. My job is very, very busy, but as I said before, I truly love what I do. And Tulane has really, truly helped me be more grounded as it relates to my experience and how I'm able to be a great paralegal and records manager for the city. So I'm exceptionally busy.
Yeah, I can see that. And this also points out one of the qualities that we always see in job notices and that we stress in the paralegal training from beginning to end, in fact, and it's the same for lawyers, by the way, is the need for great organization and for a mental capacity for encompassing a lot of different matters and organizing things both physically and mentally to enable you to do your job. And looking around you, Kim, and looking at all those boxes and files is a great illustration, I think, of what the job often entails. It is a good deal of knowledge and information that's vital to everybody involved in your very large legal team and in smaller legal teams as well. So it's pretty fascinating. And it's actually wonderful to be able to get a view of the files, the books, and the boxes that are part of your day.
Yeah,
so
let me show you guys this is our file room right here, and I'm going to show a view picture of it so everybody can see. This section right here is our litigation section. This is all of our cases that's active. Over here is our housing, all of our housing things. On this side right here is our in-house files. Things are still active at this moment. Over here is all of our property taxes cases, right? Okay. In this section over here is our civil service cases. These are all of our files that's actively being handled by attorneys in our office. However, some of them are closed, but we still maintain those files. Eventually, they're going to be archived, scanned and archived, and given over to our vital records source facilitator. But this is all the civil service cases right here, boxes and boxes, and of course, this is my desk. And it's really, really, really it's a great job, and I truly enjoy what I do.
Well, that's what makes it fascinating to see, and it also, I think it's helpful for anyone wanting to enter the legal field to understand what it's like for the court personnel, because quite often court personnel like you and your colleagues who are usually there when it's not COVID are the link between the suit that's filed and the actual process that goes through the court. And it's the folks who are there on the ground in the court can be your best friends when you're
Yeah.
the paralegal or the lawyer on the outside. So you've also given a pre-lesson to our potential students and hopefully an active lesson to those who already are students. Well, let's talk about you now, Jenna, and what your days looked like before COVID, because the litigation management and oversight that you were doing is somewhat unique, and I'd love to hear more about that.
Absolutely. So I'll start with a focus group and mock trial and go through what each of those days were. So focus group, I would go get the jurors. We would have them meet in the lobby of our building. We work downtown, bring them up to the room. We had a mock courtroom set up. And with that day, it was several different attorneys and all the cases were different. So each attorney would do a presentation and then one attorney would act as moderator and discuss with the jurors, what did you hear? What information do you get? What do you think about this? And the main part, it was called squeezing the orange, was we wanted to get to the why do they think that way part of it. So I was actually trained to act as one of the moderators who would discuss with the jurors, you know, why they got to the conclusion that they got to based on the information they were given. So that was really cool and always interesting because like I said, it was always a different case. Sometimes it was auto, sometimes it was premise, sometimes we had a video, sometimes we just had a photo, sometimes it was just, you know, a statement that an attorney would read. Then we would have them fill out surveys throughout the day. So following up, you know, once they were excused for the day, we would then have an attorney debriefing meeting. And it was me and then, of course, all the other attorneys who took part in that day. And we would discuss just what the results were and, you know, where we think we would go from there and how, you know, was it successful? Like, did they get the information they needed from the case? Like, do they want to keep moving forward with the case or is it something they should drop? You know, is it worth pursuing? So that was really cool. And then to follow up from that, I would write a memo for each, you know, case research that we had gathered. Mock trials were a little bit more formal. We literally went through the whole process of what a real trial would be. So we had the jurors come in, and even though I had kind of done like my own like voir dire with them prior, because obviously, you know, I would get applications and have to filter through those based on whatever jurisdiction the trial might be in. So the whole day would be, you know, just like a trial. They would come in, we would do a voir dire. We had one attorney act as a judge and then one attorney act as the defense counsel. And that was usually co-counsel who was ever on the case. And then of course the plaintiff attorney. And it was great too, because the actual client would be present as well. So the client got a chance to practice just in case trial ever did happen, not only with their testimony and being questioned by their attorney, but with cross-examination too, which can be a little nerve-wracking, as you can imagine. So we did, like I said, the whole day, voir dire, opening statements, witness testimony, the client testified. Then we let the jury deliberate on their own after closing statements and everything. And then when they reached a verdict, they would come get me. Again, I acted as moderator and we discussed like, how did you get to that verdict you got to? Then we would have our attorney debriefing meeting and discuss the results of that. And again, to follow up, I wrote a memo on that as well. So it was a lot of litigation support, a lot of working with a bunch of different attorneys, not just one specific attorney. And I got to learn so much more about all the different specific cases that are out there and just little components of that that affect the law and affect how the case will go. And it was so interesting. I really loved it.
It sounds like a fascinating position. And I think what's really interesting and would be useful knowledge for everyone is that you were retained, you were hired originally as a paralegal, right? At Morris Bart. And then this evolved how?
So like you said, I was a legal assistant, so one-on-one with an attorney. That day was typically like client calls, correspondence, managing calendars, you know, getting medical records, setting up claims, and then also litigation tasks too, like setting up dates with the court, depots, and all that stuff. And it just, this position was kind of created. We had kind of done, I worked closely with our Gulfport office as well. And one of the head attorneys there was with the Keenan Trial Institute. If y'all have ever heard of that, Don Keenan was a trial attorney and realized the success rate he had with doing a focus group or mock trial prior to actually trying a case. So there's this whole college for attorneys that is dedicated to helping them learn their litigation skills and actually prepare them for trial. So with that being said, that was something that they wanted to implement within the firm. It was already kind of established in the Gulfport office, but they wanted to bring it into the New Orleans office and really get it going. So we had a focus group once a month in each office. And again, that would be anywhere from like 4 to 7 cases a day. And then mock trials were kind of scheduled like as needed, depending on who had a trial coming up, if they needed to do a mock trial or whatnot. So yeah, it was definitely kind of creative for me. And it was definitely needed because they did have 2 attorneys trying to run it. But they also had a full caseload and trials coming up and everything. And our attorneys would manage anywhere from 80 to 120 cases per attorney.
Oh, wow. That's a lot.
From that number, about 30 of them, I would say on average, were litigation cases. So it was a lot of work, you know, workload on them. But yeah, so it was very strange. It's just a very specific role and a very specific job that was in the office. It was hard to explain to people. A lot of people in my office didn't even really know what I did. They just saw me running around like a crazy person half the time because, you know, just the days were busy. But I loved it. It was really great.
And the importance, I think, of this role and the kind of fascinating part of it is that if a case goes to trial, then the result depends upon what the jury decides. So if you're doing focus groups and talking to prospective, or these are not prospective jurors, these are probably volunteers, right?
Yes, I mean, they compensated for their time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they all loved it though. I actually had one lady tell me,
they loved it.
so fun. I kind of want to go do a paralegal thing. She was like, are you an attorney? Or, you know, I was like, no, I'm actually a paralegal. I went to the Tulane program like 2 years ago. She's like, I'm going to look into that. That sounds really cool. And I was like, you should.
But it is fascinating because the cases depend upon the lawyers convincing others, and to have a test run on what kinds of arguments are convincing is pretty fascinating and very valuable. And I wanted to explain one legal term in case anybody in our webinar doesn't know. Voir dire or voir dire, depends on where you are and where your lawyer was trained, how you're going to pronounce it. It's a process where if maybe you've done jury duty, some of you, but if you get a pool of jurors and they are all brought into the courtroom with the judge and the attorneys and sometimes the parties, and the attorneys interview the potential panelists and ask them questions about their preferences, their backgrounds, and so on. And this is called voir dire or voir dire, and it helps them sort out who the actual 12 members of that jury are going to be based on their backgrounds. And so that's what that term means. And look, you've already learned something, and this is not even a class. So, all right. So another question that I wanted to ask you all, and I don't think that we have quite covered this anyway, is what do you enjoy most about your job? What is the thing that makes you happiest about what you do? Claire?
I think one of the things that makes me the most happy is being able to, if you're a paralegal or a legal assistant or you know, working for a lawyer, you a lot of times work directly with the clients. And one of the best things, you know, you can do is just, I love being able to relate to them and hear their story and them, you know, to understand that they're like trusting you with whether it's their idea or something that happened in their life. And I think that's probably something that it's very valuable to me in the sense where it allows me to not only connect with people, but also just look at things from a different perspective or understand, you know, everyone has a different life, you know, and so I really personally enjoy that a lot.
All right. What about you, Kim? Oh, you're muted.
There you go. The most thing I like, the best thing that I like about my day is that it's never a dull moment. When I come in, everything is almost fresh and new. When I sit at my desk, look at the calendar and I get the mail. I get these notices from the courthouse letting me know that this has been moved from this day to this day. But I think essentially what I love the most about is that it's never a dull moment. When I get home, I sit in my chair and I go, wow, productive day. Very productive.
That's great. How about you, Jenna? Oops, we got to unmute.
I'm sorry. I'm technologically challenged. Speaking of challenges, that's one aspect I really loved, because it was each time a case, came to me that an attorney needed to present or whatever, it was trying to figure out, okay, how do you want to present this? What facts do you need to know? What kind of results do you want to get? What kind of jurors are you looking for? So there was always, the kind of process of figuring that out, and then learning new processes of how I would moderate that jury based on the information that they wanted to get out of them. And then, like Claire said, I loved interacting with our clients. I loved working more one-on-one, not just with one attorney, but the whole office and the other litigating attorneys. That was a really cool opportunity that not a lot of people have. And also there was just always something new that I was learning every day. And I loved learning everything at Tulane. Like I said, learning about the law was so fascinating, but then it kept going. Every day I would learn something new. And which would be in practice too, because it was actually something I needed to implement in what I was doing for the firm. And like Kim said, never boring, never a dull moment. And I was a workaholic by choice. I loved my job. So I worked a lot of hours. You don't have to do that, but yes, definitely a workaholic by choice. And I think that's it, right? I got it.
That's great. No, that's fascinating. And I think that's what happens with a lot of people who enter the legal profession in any aspect. You get caught up in the fact that it involves human beings, and sometimes human conflict, sometimes human endeavors such as transactions, property purchases, wills, things that are not really conflict oriented. But it's always interesting because there are human beings involved. Even if it's a corporate transaction, it's people at the bottom, it's people. So I think that's what draws people in, and so often turns them into workaholics, or just gives them a good busy day that makes their lives happy and fulfilled. Now, we had a question in the chat, which is, will they speak on income, current and past? We don't usually try to delve directly into this, but I can tell you that there's such a wide expanse of salary. There's such a broad salary range for people who enter the paralegal profession. From beginning, it depends upon whether you're in a larger firm that is in the metropolitan area or in one of the outer parishes. The salary range can be incredibly broad, so it's kind of hard to touch on that. And it also depends upon years of experience, what type of work you're doing, and whether you're with say a sole practitioner or in a larger firm as part of a bigger legal team. So that's kind of tough. I always like to refer people, though, to the Department of Labor Statistics, which has a great set of information about Louisiana in general for paralegal careers, and also New Orleans in particular. So that's a good source to look at for that. And I wanted to mention as well, Jenna and several of the students in our program and graduates as well have been involved in a local organization called New Orleans Paralegal Association, or NOPA, which has provided great support and help to our students on an ongoing basis. It's a great organization, and if you're coming to the paralegal career anew, or you're moving here into this career from something else, it's great to have that kind of support from people who are in the profession, who are able to talk you through new events and provide forms, just generally help you out. So everyone who comes into our program, I always recommend that they join NOPA and participate actively. They have learning seminars, and they also have social events where people can network and get started on their legal careers. And I wanted to ask Anne, it looks like we have about 9 or 10 minutes more. Do we typically open these sessions up to questions? Does anyone have any questions to ask us? Or do you want to put them in the chat? Okay, and this is more about our program here. We offer the Bachelor of Arts degree and the paralegal certificate, which come together, and the post-baccalaureate certificate, which is available to people who have already completed an undergraduate degree and are looking to change careers. That's what Jenna did. I think, Claire, you did that as well. And it's a great tool. It's a great tool for moving from one specific area into another.
Can I add one point on that?
Please.
Like I said, it was a great education within Tulane, but it's a practical education. They prepare you for what it's going to be like in the law office. It's not just sit down, read a textbook, take a test, you pass, great. We're going to throw you out there and see how you do. You literally get the training and education and like knowledge you need to be prepared to walk into your job interview or any law office and be successful with that and rely on, you know, your education that you've gotten.
That's fantastic. And it does take confidence when you're moving from one career to another. You do have to have the feeling that you know enough to step into the role for which you've been hired. And I'm happy to hear that you felt that way.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I totally agree. I totally agree as well. I think that most paralegals, as I said earlier, is that they should always take the initiative to learn about the practice, learn about their attorney, read everything your attorney has done, so you get a good understanding as it relates to what's going on in your particular case. Most law firms today, they do love paralegals that take the initiative, that do have a little bit of a, because being a paralegal to a certain degree or another, you are almost in a leadership position. You know, you're on a side leadership position, but then again, they rely on you to keep everyone updated that's on the team. Because most times people would just not, I guess they don't really truly worry about it as much as a paralegal should, because as a paralegal, you know, your attorney's work and integrity should be on the top of the list as it relates to how the practice of law will be done. I mean, especially in your firm.
Right, everything is on the line so often. We had a question in the chat, and thank you for asking this. I'm taking the bachelor degree program. Do I receive a certificate as well? Yes, indeed. Everyone who graduates with a bachelor's degree also receives a paralegal certificate. And those who complete the post-baccalaureate certificate, of course, obviously receive the certificate. Why the certificate? What does that matter? Well, in the paralegal world and in the legal profession, a certificate indicates to the hiring world in the legal market that you have completed the necessary and appropriate training to serve as a paralegal. So that is significant in that it applies to your employability. So that's why we provide that as part of along with the diploma when you graduate, so that you are not only possessing the education, but also possessing the credentials that you need to walk into the job market and say, I've got this.
Correct. That's correct. That's correct. The beautiful thing about Tulane is like what you said earlier, how your education in Tulane is so vital because the institution typically will train you to the best of their knowledge. Tulane, in my experience, has been one of the best things that ever happened to me in my career, because I was able to rely on the university, but also feel connected as it relates to, this is what I've learned, this is who I can go to advice. Because when I was a student, I think Helen Babin and then Nancy Wagner were administrators during my time, and they were a big help for me. When I got into the profession, I was able to learn a lot about different areas of law. So, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that is one of the aspects of the program that we do try to stress is you've got to continue learning. It's a lifelong process, and it will only enhance your career to know as much as you possibly can and to develop your skills to the greatest extent possible. Well, it's looking to me like we are running out of time. If there are no additional questions, we're really thankful for all of you panelists for participating. I really appreciate you joining us today and sharing your stories, especially. You're a wonderful group. We're proud of you as our graduates, and we're really happy for the good lives you're having after having completed the program here. And for those of you who joined today, thank you. Thank you for your interest. And I hope that we will see you in our classes and as part of our program in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, y'all. Thank you too. If you guys have any questions, please give me a call. I'm with the city, righty?
Yes, same.
All right, y'all.
As well, and also, as Robin mentioned, I'm involved with NOPA. I'm the secretary, so if anyone has questions about that, reach out to me. I think she has my information. If not, but you can find me. That's my name.
Yeah.
Same.
Wonderful.
Thanks, guys.
All right, ladies. Y'all have a good one.
Bye.
Have a good weekend. Be safe. Thanks,
Be safe.
Robin.